The Forgotten Vaults of the Lowlands. It began with a discovery no one expected: a series of sealed chambers uncovered beneath a reclaimed marsh, their entrances hidden for centuries beneath layers of silt, stone, and forgotten history. Workers thought they had stumbled upon an abandoned cellar. What they found instead was a network of vaults, untouched yet unmistakably designed for the safekeeping of wealth that once flowed through the lowlands like a rising tide. To understand why these vaults matter, we must return to a time when the lowlands were among the busiest crossroads in Europe. Its ports carried goods from distant seas. Its markets drew merchants from every direction. Prosperity moved through its streets in caravans and riverboats, linking empires that shared little but ambition. But prosperity also made the region vulnerable to prey for war, rivalry, and the unpredictable whims of monarchs. In such an uncertain landscape, people built vaults not only to store wealth, but to hide it from the world. The first reveal begins with the method of construction. These chambers were reinforced far beyond what any merchant house would require. Their walls bore marks of engineering far ahead of their era. Their doors were forged from alloys more commonly seen in armories than treasuries. Whoever built them intended not just to protect riches, but to bury them beyond the reach of kings, thieves, and catastrophes alike. Then came the second beat. Records recovered from nearby ruins hinted at a collective of powerful trading families who pooled their fortunes into these vaults during an age of escalating conflict. They feared invasion. They feared confiscation. They feared the sudden collapse of trade routes that had made their cities flourish. So they hid their wealth: gold, documents, bonds, and artifacts of immense value, trusting that one day stability would return, and they could reclaim what they had sealed away. Yet history had other plans. Floods reshaped the rivers. Wars shifted borders. Entire merchant dynasties vanished without heirs. And the Marshland swallowed everything, entombing the vaults until even their existence slipped from memory. But now, centuries later, they had surfaced again, silent, intact, waiting to reveal a story the lowlands had long forgotten. The rediscovery of the vaults sparked excitement across the lowlands, but curiosity soon gave way to caution. As scholars, officials, and financiers examined the chambers, they discovered that each vault bore unique markings from different merchant families, symbols of guilds that had shaped the region's golden age. Yet many of these families no longer existed. Their names had faded from records, their influence dissolved by centuries of conflict and shifting borders. The question emerged quietly at first, then loudly: who, if anyone, owned the treasures now resting in the dark? As the reveal deepened, catalogers uncovered documents sealed in oilskin, astonishingly preserved. These papers outlined agreements between trading houses, contracts of mutual protection, letters of credit, and inventories so vast they seemed impossible. But some pages were missing. Others referenced vault numbers that did not correspond to any chamber yet found. The scale of the operation became clear: the vaults were not a simple hiding place, but part of a coordinated financial sanctuary built by merchants who feared that one war could erase generations of fortune overnight. Problems emerged almost immediately. One vault contained chests of bullion stamped with the insignia of a kingdom that no longer existed. Another held trade bonds issued by foreign powers whose modern successors disputed any connection. In the largest chamber, ledgers revealed loans once extended to rulers whose debts had never been repaid. Suddenly, the vaults had become a political lightning rod. Modern states argued over historical obligations. Local councils feared being drawn into ancient disputes. Banks worried that releasing the contents could destabilize regional markets already sensitive to speculation. Inside the excavation team, conflict took shape. Historians insisted the vaults should be preserved as a heritage site. Economists argued that unlocking the assets could revitalize struggling towns. Government officials, wary of international disputes, pushed for strict secrecy until ownership could be determined. The tension grew sharper with every discovery. Matters worsened when they uncovered a sealed chest unlike the others, a container inscribed with warnings in multiple languages, each message older than the last. When opened under controlled conditions, it revealed not gold but a collection of correspondences detailing a crisis that once threatened to engulf the lowlands. The letters described a betrayal among the merchant families, a dispute over whether some members had diverted wealth for personal escape rather than collective safety. The vaults, once symbols of unity, were built amid conflict deeper than anyone had imagined. Outside the excavation site, news of the find ignited the public imagination. Traders speculated wildly. Collectors sought advance claims. Protests erupted over fears that private interests would seize what many believed should belong to the people. The Lowlands had rediscovered its hidden treasure, but with it came the reawakening of debts long buried and rivalries long dormant. And as pressure mounted from every direction, the question loomed larger: were the vaults a gift from the past, or a fuse waiting to be lit? The fuse ignited when a team of archivists uncovered a sealed corridor connecting the known vaults to a deeper, previously undetected chamber. Unlike the others, this entrance bore no merchant insignia. Its iron door was reinforced beyond anything seen in the upper levels, suggesting that whatever lay inside was never meant to be accessed casually, or perhaps never meant to be accessed again. The discovery sent a tremor through every group involved. For some, it promised answers. For others, it threatened to unravel everything. When the door was finally opened, a heavy silence filled the room. Inside stood rows of chests arranged with almost ceremonial care. But it was the central pedestal that drew every eye, a ledger bound in hardened leather, its pages dense with figures, names, and coded annotations. This ledger, once deciphered, revealed the full scale of the forgotten network, a system of mutual loans and emergency reserves designed not just for protection but for influence. The merchants had built more than a sanctuary. They had built the financial backbone of an entire era, hidden beneath the Marshlands. The conflict reached a new level as governments demanded access to the ledger's secrets. Some states argued that the debts recorded within were still valid, even centuries later. Others countered that enforcing such claims would destabilize present-day economies. Meanwhile, local councils feared losing control of a discovery found on their own soil. The competing interests clashed in urgent meetings, each side convinced it was defending the region's rightful future. But tension escalated further when analysts realized what the numbers implied: at least one major merchant family had withdrawn its share from the vaults before the chambers were sealed. Even worse, the ledger suggested that this withdrawal had been disguised as a transfer designed to protect the vault's balance. If true, it meant that the long-accepted narrative of unity among the trading houses had been a myth. Betrayal had shaped the foundation of the Lowlands' hidden treasury. Outside the negotiation halls, the crisis deepened. Currency markets across the region fluctuated as rumors spread. Investors feared that the release of vast historical assets, if mishandled, could distort values overnight. Civil groups demanded transparency, accusing officials of hiding the ledger's contents. International observers arrived to assess the potential global implications. What began as a historical curiosity had become a destabilizing force, pulling at threads woven through centuries of economic interaction. Inside the excavation site, workers grew uneasy. They recognized the shift in atmosphere, the way officials spoke in hushed tones, the sudden presence of armed guards, the urgency with which documents were carried away. Some feared the vaults would soon be closed off entirely, hidden once again under the guise of national security. Others whispered that decisions had already been made behind closed doors, long before the public knew the stakes. The build-up reached its peak when a second, smaller ledger was uncovered beneath a loose stone near the pedestal. This book, hastily written and far less polished, seemed to detail a contingency plan, a strategy for what the merchant families should do if the coalition ever fractured. The final entries hinted that the vaults were never intended as a permanent solution, but as a temporary safeguard for a crisis that was expected to pass. Instead, the world moved on, leaving the vaults and their vast, unresolved obligations to sink beneath the marshlands. Now exposed to modern eyes, that forgotten plan forced a reckoning. The past had resurfaced not as a treasure, but as a challenge. A reminder that wealth hidden too long becomes something else entirely: a burden, a question, a spark waiting for the moment to ignite. And that moment was rapidly approaching. The decisive moment arrived when the council overseeing the excavation convened a final, high-stakes assembly. Representatives from regional governments, international observers, historians, merchants, and citizen groups crowded into a hall swollen with tension. Everyone knew the truth: the vaults could no longer remain untouched. The discoveries had grown too vast, the implications too deep. The lowlands stood at a crossroads, and the next decision would define not only how the past was interpreted, but how the future would unfold. The climax began when the contents of the master ledger were formally presented. The figures confirmed what many had feared: the vaults were part of a powerful financial alliance built centuries earlier, an alliance that had shaped markets, influenced rulers, and determined the fate of entire regions. But they also revealed something more explosive. The missing merchant family, the one that had withdrawn its wealth before the vaults were sealed, had left behind a trail of unfulfilled obligations. Their departure had destabilized the system long before nature swallowed the marshlands, leaving a silent debt that echoed through generations. The room erupted in conflict. Some demanded restitution from the modern descendants of those families, arguing that inherited wealth should carry inherited responsibility. Others warned that pursuing such claims would ignite legal and diplomatic battles stretching far beyond the lowlands. Economists urged caution, insisting that releasing any of the vault's treasure could distort markets already reacting to the crisis. Citizen groups argued that the vaults belonged to the people, not to vanished dynasties or distant governments. The debate surged like a tide, unpredictable, forceful, impossible to contain. But amid the chaos, a path forward emerged. A proposal was drafted to transform the vaults into a shared public trust, overseen by an independent board with strict transparency requirements. The treasure would not be liquidated. Instead, it would be preserved as a historical and financial reserve, a monument to the region's past and a safeguard for its future. Revenues generated from controlled exhibitions and research access would support local development, education, and restoration of the marshlands. The decision balanced caution with opportunity, honoring history without letting it destabilize the present. When the vote was cast, the outcome was decisive. The vaults would not be buried again. They would stand as a rare gift from the past, protected, studied, and responsibly managed. The turmoil that had threatened to fracture the lowlands gave way to a fragile unity, built not on fear or secrecy but on accountability and shared purpose. The resolution echoed far beyond the region. Other states began reassessing their own hidden reserves, their forgotten debts, their sealed archives. The lowlands had shown that confronting the past openly could strengthen the foundations of the present. And the vaults themselves, once symbols of uncertainty, now stood as a testament to the power of transparency. In our world today, buried wealth still exists, sometimes literal, sometimes hidden in balance sheets or policy decisions. The story of the lowlands reminds us that what lies beneath the surface can shape entire societies, for better or worse. Sometimes the smallest shift in perspective becomes the beginning of a new future.